to make shit happen. My guest today is Michelle Seiler Tucker. Michelle, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy with your new book launching soon over here, and thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the podcast with me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Sam.
Michelle, I came across your profile on LinkedIn, and it really, it kind of grabbed me because I'm in business, and some of the things you said, it makes so much sense. But and I want to talk about it a little bit. But before we go any further, would you mind telling our listeners and people who are watching us on YouTube who is Michelle Seiler Tucker?
Sure. So who's Michelle Seiler Tucker? Well, I'm an entrepreneur, number one. I've owned many different businesses in many different verticals. I'm a mergers and acquisitions master intermediary, along with a senior business analyst and a bunch of other acronyms behind my name. I've personally sold over 500 companies. My firm has sold over 1,000 businesses. On average, I close about 98% of all offers I write. We typically get 20 to 40% higher selling price for our clients. And I learned a long time ago when I first got into this industry, I've been in this industry a little over 20 years, that what Steve Forbes says is true. 8 out of 10 businesses don't sell, 80%. So I learned a long time ago, if I don't fix them and tweak them and build them and grow them to sell, then I would starve to death. So I really specialize in buying, selling, fixing, growing businesses. I buy businesses and fix them. I partner with business owners, investing my resources, my capital, energy, efforts, expertise, and really build that business to sell, put them on a build to sell model, and buy businesses and flip them. So really what we specialize in: buying, selling, fixing, growing. At any given time, I own 5 to 10 different companies in different verticals that I'm also building to sell. I told you I have a company not too far from you in Stafford, Texas. And that was a company that called me about selling, and they were not sellable. So now they're my partner.
Wow. And you, of course, you're doing, whatever your principles are, applying them there to make sure that they become sellable. Now, Michelle, how did you get in this business? I mean, did you go to school for this? How did you get into this?
So I've always been an entrepreneur. I was in franchise sales. I've always been an entrepreneur, owning many different companies. I did get sucked into corporate America. So I did go to work for Xerox for a brief period of time. I ended up leaving Xerox and going into franchise sales, franchise consulting, and franchise development, where I was an equity partner in different franchisors' companies. And one day I just realized that all these buyers were asking me for existing businesses. They didn't want to buy a franchise. And I felt like I kept saying, no, I don't have existing businesses. We only have new startup franchises. And so then I said, you know what? I need to just open up an M&A firm and sell existing businesses, because I had so many buyers, that were requesting existing businesses versus new franchises. So that's how and when I started my M&A firm.
That's awesome. Now, Michelle, I read somewhere that when you worked at Xerox, you were called the closer.
Yes.
What is that? Tell me about that.
Xerox actually recruited me from their biggest competitor because they couldn't beat me. Xerox would come into a client meeting with, they call it team suit Xerox, so men in suits. So it would be like 5 or 6 men in suits with coffee and donuts, and they would be competing against me. And I'm by myself. I don't have a team of men in suits, and they can never beat me. So they said, gosh, if we can't beat her, why don't we recruit her? And they recruited me. Within 6 months, everybody said, gosh, if this person can't close it, get Michelle, she'll close it. She's a closer. She closes everything. And then within 6 months, my supervisor came to me and said, you really should interview for the regional vice president position, overseeing 100 salespeople. She said, you probably won't get it. And it's a 3-month process. She said, you probably won't get it because you've been here for 6 months. And Xerox policy is 2 years before they promote. And she said, plus you're up against a bunch of other people from Xerox. They've been here for 10, 15, 20 years. So I'm like, well, why would I apply for something that's going to take 3 months that I'm never going to get? And she said, because of the experience. She said, you'll learn so much throughout this process. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And she was right. You know, it was 3 months of meeting with all the high levels executives at Xerox all over the United States, Q&As, demonstrations, presentations. Anyway, I ended up getting it, even
Wow.
though, and they broke their own policy and they promoted me from within. And so I guess I truly am the closer. But then very quickly I realized I didn't like it. And the reason I didn't like it is because I'm a people person. You know, I love finding out what people's problems are and coming up with solution. I'm very solution oriented, and I like to make change quickly. With corporate America, you're having meetings to schedule more meetings, to schedule follow-up meetings. And it's so tough to get anything done and get anything agreed upon because there's so much red tape you have to go through. So that's when I ended up leaving Xerox and going into franchise development, franchise sales, and franchise consulting.
Got you. Okay. So, and then you went to franchise, and then all of a sudden, and M&A. And
Right, right. About 3 years later, I transitioned into M&A.
what makes you so good? You say you closed 98% of your deals?
Yeah,
What
my
makes you
deals.
so
I
good? What
can't
makes
say
you
that.
so
I
good
can't
then?
say that about the rest of my team, but I do. I think, you know, what makes me so good is number one, I've owned businesses. I've been on the other side. I know what business owners go through. I know what their struggles are, you know. I know what they're looking for. I know what they're trying to accomplish. We do a lot of our due diligence up front so that we don't, you know, get stuck later in a business that can't sell. Um, most of my competitions never even owned a business before. Most of M&A advisors never even owned a company before. So I can really empathize with that owner. Plus, I know how to fix businesses. I know how to tweak them. I know how to get them to where they need to be so that we can maximize value. And plus, I know the buyers. I know what buyers are looking for. I know what synergies buyers are willing to pay top dollar for. I know what buyers can take advantage of economies of scale, and what buyers have the infrastructure to cut costs so that they can increase EBITDA from day one of closing a business.
Well, so what is the when you get these people to sell, like this company that you're partners in now, what are people thinking? What do business people? I mean, I know sometimes business entrepreneurs, because I'm an entrepreneur, I know some of us are very naive. We don't have no clue, how much a business will sell for, how much will people buy businesses for. And a
Right.
lot of us, to us, because it's our prized possession, the value, it's hundreds of millions of dollars worth. So, I mean, what kind of challenges do you have when people bring this to you and they have no idea, and it's probably business not sellable?
Yeah. So there's lots of challenges. Remember when Steve Forbes says 80% of businesses don't sell?
Yeah.
The reason, and Steve Forbes endorsed my book, Exit Rich. The reason that 80% of businesses don't sell is because most business owners have never even thought about selling until somebody makes them an offer, but then they don't accept that offer because they don't know if that's a good enough offer for them and they want a higher price. Everybody wants a higher price, but they're basing that on what they want, not necessarily what the value is. And so business owners don't really think about selling until a catastrophic event has occurred, internal or external. Internal could be health issues, partner dispute, divorce, death, and external could be this pandemic we're in. The worst time to sell a business is when you're in the middle of a catastrophic event occurring. The best time, because your business is going to be trending downward. You know, all these restaurants and everything that are trying to sell right now, this is not the time you should try to sell because the industry is doing, so bad. You need to hold on a little bit longer. But the best time to sell your business is when your business is doing well and in its prime. And most business owners want to hold on to it and hold on to it and hold on to it when it's in its prime. And then they stay in it and then the business starts going down for a multitude of reasons. So you really got to plan your STGPS exit model that I'll talk about in Exit Rich from day one of buying or starting a company. So let's go through that real quick.
Yeah.
If you want to drive somewhere, Sam, what do? You pull out your phone, you go to Google Maps, and what do you plug in?
Address.
Right, which is your destination.
Right.
You know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, you're going to drive around in circles and drive your wife crazy. And that's what a lot of business owners do, is they don't, business owners don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. They have no destination. They have no end game. So they're driving around in circles, driving up and down the financial hills to end up nowhere. So what you have to determine is, what is my end game? What do I want to sell my business for? What is my desired price tag? And a lot of business owners get hung up on a number, but everybody needs to pick a number. So let's say, Sam, if you want to sell, let's say we want to sell a business for $50 million. Great, there's a number, right? You might make it, you might not, you might surpass that. But at least you got a target. At least you have a destination that you're driving towards. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then the next thing the GPS model needs to know is, where are you starting from? What is your current location? In other words, what is your business worth right now? What is your business valuation? Now, most business owners have never had their business evaluated. And they certainly don't get it evaluated once a year. We go to the doctor once a year for an annual checkup to make sure our heart's still ticking and we're still kicking. We take our car to the shop to make sure our car has an annual tune-up, but we don't make sure that we have an annual valuation checkup on our business. That is financial suicide, because your business should be your most valuable asset. And there are events that increase valuation and there are events that decrease valuation. So every year you need to know where you're starting from. So let's say you want to sell for $50 million and you're worth $30 million. Now, the next thing you need to know is time frame. You want to do this in 5 years? You want to do this in 10 years, 15 years? Figure out your time frame. And the problem is, most business owners wait till they're like 80 years old and the businesses just went down, down, down till it's practically nothing. So let's say you want to sell for 50 million or worth 30 million. Let's say you want to do this in 5 years. Then the next thing you need to figure out is, who are my buyers going to be? Now, you notice I said buyers and not buyer.
Right.
Because so many clients come to me, Sam, and say, Michelle, I have the buyer. I don't need you to bring me a buyer. I just need you to represent me and do everything else. Great. But you know what I always tell them? No, we're going to put you on the market at the same time, because what happens if that buyer falls apart? The likelihood that that one buyer is going to close on your business is slim to none. And then you have no backup buyers. So you should never want to put all your buyers in all your eggs in one buyer's basket. Yeah. And in addition to that, Sam, how can you ever create and get maximum value on your business and create competition if you only have one buyer? The way that you get the highest price for a business is to create a bidding war and have multiple buyers bidding on your business. So there's 5 types of buyers. Let's run through them real quick. Number one is first-time buyers. They're not going to buy a $50 million company. They can't afford it. Number 2 is turnaround specialists. They buy distressed assets. They're not buying a $50 million company. Number 3 is private equity groups. Private equity groups won't even look at you as a platform unless you have at least $3 million and up in EBITDA. Some of them want $5 million to $6 million in EBITDA. And then they might look at you as an add-on if they're already in that platform space, if you have lower EBITDA. And then you have strategics and competitors. Strategics and competitors typically will pay the highest price because they're paying for synergies. And they're willing to pay a higher multiple to get those synergies, because those synergies can help catapult their current business to the next level. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then you have sophisticated entrepreneurs. Sophisticated entrepreneurs are industry agnostic. They chase EBITDA. EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So then you have to reverse engineer your plan and say, okay, if I want to sell for 50 million, I'm worth 30 million, I want to do it in 5 years. Then you need to figure out, well, where's the numbers need to be? Where's my numbers need to be? Where's the gross revenues need to be? Cost of goods. And at the end of the day, where's the EBITDA need to end up at? Right? So if you want to sell for $50 million, you need to have some synergies that synergetic buyers will look for and pay top dollar for. But your EBITDA needs to be around 7, 6 million, 8 million, somewhere around there. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then you got to look at, okay, these 3 buyers, PEGs, strategic competitors, and sophisticated entrepreneurs, what synergies do they buy? And then you build your business on what we call the 6 Ps, the ST 6 Ps. So you have that solid infrastructure. And most importantly, you build those proprietary assets that they're willing to pay more money for. The last thing in the GPS exit model is your why. Why do you want to sell for $50 million? If it was easy to sell a business for $50 million, Sam, everybody would be doing it. So the why is going to be strong enough. It's going to be motivational enough. It's got to keep you in the game and keep you weathering all the different financial storms that occur, right? So that's really the GPS exit model. And I have never met a business owner in the last 20 plus years, over 1,000 transactions we've done, that have actually planned out their exit strategy. Never.
Tell us a little bit about the 6 Ps.
Okay, so the 6 Ps are your infrastructure, and they're the synergies that buyers pay for. The number 1 P, the most important P, well, they're all important, but is people. You don't build a business, you build people, and people build the business. And the number 1 reason that businesses are not sellable, other than they're not doing well and they don't have a sellable asset, is that the business is 1,000% dependent upon that owner. You take that owner out of the business, there is no business, right? A dentist just called me up, has a pretty decent business. One dentist, been in business for 45 years, 3 dental hygienists. And by the way, the 3 are family members. And he wants to sell the business. And I said, well, you have to stay on for 2 to 3 years. He goes, Michelle, I'm not staying on. And neither are his dental hygienist. So I said, when you leave, everybody else leaves. So entrepreneurs have to focus on their strengths and hire their weaknesses. Focus on your strengths and hire your weaknesses. And you got to put the right people in the right seats. A lot of business owners have the wrong people in the wrong seats. And then, Sam, you have to ask the who question. Who opens the doors? Who handles marketing, customer service, accounting, legal, environmental, distribution, manufacturing, and whatever the who is. The clue, Sam, is you should never be next to the who, because you want the business to run without you.
Yeah.
So everybody listening to this right now should pause, take out a piece of paper, write down all the who's, and make sure that you have the right people in the right seat handling the who's. Because the biggest problem with businesses, and the reason they're not sellable, is because the business is dependent upon that owner, and all the data is in that owner's head. And when the owner dies or the owner leaves, the business dies. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the second P is product. So this is your product, your industry, your service. And you have to ask yourself, is your product, your industry, your service on the way up or on the way out? Is it thriving or is it dying? Do you have an Amazon in your prime and it's the top of your game? Or do you have a Blockbuster and you're about to go bust? And I tell all of my clients to ask themselves these 3 transformational questions. Amazon did this in the 90s. They asked themselves, what business are we in? So everybody right now, even you, Sam, should be asking yourself, what business am I in? And Amazon said, we're in the book selling business. We sell books. And then they asked, well, what is, number 2 question, what is our core competencies? What do we do better than everybody else? What is our USP, our unique selling proposition? And Amazon said, we're the best at fulfillment. We do fulfillment better than anybody else. Well, then the third obvious question is, what business should I be in? And Amazon said we should be in a fulfillment business. We shouldn't just be fulfilling book orders. We should be fulfilling products for every company all around the world. So those 3 transformational questions is what transformed Amazon from a small bookseller to a multi-billion-dollar worldwide conglomerate that they are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So they're in the that's what they are in today, fulfillment order.
So they ask themselves, those 3 questions are so transformational. Even if you think you know what business you're in, what your core competency is, and what business you should be in, you should ask these questions on a regular basis, because there's little pivots, little tweaks that you can make in your company, like Amazon did, that could really catapult you to the next level. Does that make sense?
Yes, makes a lot of sense.
And especially the industries that are dying right now. There's so many industries dying right now because of the pandemic. But if you just ask yourself those 3 questions and pivot, you can be back in a thriving industry again.
Yeah.
So
Like,
the third P is
well, I was
processes.
going to agree with you on that. I'm sorry, but go ahead. Third
What,
P.
what did you say?
I said I was going to agree with you. There's a lot of businesses dying, because of the pandemic.
A lot of industries, like the restaurant industry, is dead, but there are restaurants that are really surviving and really thriving right now because they did that. They asked themselves those three questions and they pivoted, because
Yeah.
restaurants not in the business of serving food, right? It's kind of like McDonald's. Did you ever watch the movie The Founder?
No, I haven't, but I've heard of it.
You got to watch that movie. It's like the best movie ever.
The founder.
So back the McDonald's brothers started McDonald's, but Ray Kroc came in and really blew McDonald's up and took it away. But same question with McDonald's. What business are you in? And they're not in the fast food business, they're in the real estate business. They're one of the largest real estate holding companies in the world.
Yeah.
So they're in the real estate business. Okay. So the next P is processes. And processes are typically like exit strategy. People don't think about processes just like they don't think about exit strategy until something bad has occurred in their business. Like we're selling a manufacturing business, and one of the employees got hurt on the job on a manufacturing floor. It was a catastrophic event. They lost an arm. And so lawsuits are coming down. Business owner's going to have to file bankruptcy. And the business owner looked at me and said, Michelle, we need a policy and procedure manual for health and safety on the manufacturing floor. And I'm like, you think you needed that before? So policies and procedures or processes are something you need to think of from the moment of starting your company or buying your company. Now, of course, you should always revisit them and tweak them along the way. But here's where most business owners get this wrong. Most business owners build their processes around their own agenda. Have you ever dealt with a bank and you got to push this number, then push this number, and then push this number, and then push this number to talk to somebody?
Yes.
Or a pharmacy, you got to push all these numbers. Or heaven forbid, if you have to deal with a social media company because you got hacked and they have no phone number and it takes you 6 months to get it figured out. So you really need to design your processes with the customer experience in mind. Say that again, because most people don't get this. Design your processes with the customer experience in mind. If you don't have happy customers, if you don't have raving fans, then you're not going to be in business very long. So McDonald brothers did this back in the 50s and 1950s. They said, look, we want to start a fast food restaurant, but we're going to design our processes around the customer experience. And they said, what do we want our customers to experience? Every one of your listeners needs to stop and ask themselves, what do we want our customers to experience? And McDonald's said, we want our customers to get great tasting food that's hot and fast, under 30 seconds. They developed all their streamlined fast food processes around that customer experience. And that was back in the 50s. You can eat at McDonald's anywhere in the world. And even though the policy has been tweaked along the way, you get the same experience, right? You pretty much get the same experience. So you really need to go back and ask yourself, what do we want our customers to experience? You want to create raving fans. Because I will tell you, every time you upset a client, a customer, it moves you down the branding ladder. Every time you create a wow experience and wow your customers, your clients, it brings you up the branding ladder.
All right. So you said a lot of business owners, they don't put the process in place unless something catastrophic happened.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of business owners don't think about processes because they're so busy thinking about getting clients, marketing, getting clients in, getting sales, paying their bills, getting money to flow in and flow in. They're not really thinking about processes, and they're certainly not thinking about the customer experience and what the customer experience needs to be. So just to recap, the processes must be designed with the customer experience in mind, not the owner's agenda, and they must be efficient, productive. Otherwise, it can cost you a lot of money and cost you to go out of business. And then well documented, because if you're trying to sell a company for $50 million, You need to have your policy and procedure manuals. You need to have your SOP checklist, employee handbooks, non-competes, employee agreements. All of this has to be well documented, before you go to sell your business. Plus, you're never going to be able to build a sustainable business that you can actually scale without getting your processes right.
How many businesses you go in and they don't even have a handbook?
Oh, a lot. I would say, they have them, but they don't really have them all documented. We have a fabrication company that we're selling, two owners, been in business for 45, 50 years, and they have 4 employees. All the data is in their head. Everything is in their head. We got another company that builds really unique ultrasound machines and for specific use. And the problem is the owner's a genius, but everything's in his head. He hasn't taken everything out. We're selling another company in a $70 million range, and they have a few policy and procedure manuals, but nothing like they need for their 300 employees.
Wow.
You really have to have those SOP checklists.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a shame. A lot of businesses, even like restaurants, they have no recipes. They have everything in their head. So
Right.
I totally agree with you. All right, what is the next P?
So the next P is the highest value driver. If your business has under $1 million in EBITDA, your business is going to trade for a multiple of anywhere from 1 to 4 times EBITDA. If your business is over $1 million in EBITDA, then it's going to go 4, 5, 5 and up, 5 and up. Proprietary assets is the highest multiple driver than anything else. You got to build your proprietary assets so you can get that 6, 7, 8 times EBITDA. You're not going to do it without proprietary assets. So this is the highest value driver. There's 6 pillars to proprietary. First and foremost is branding. The more well branded you are in your industry, the more I can sell your company for, as long as your brand is relevant in the mind of the consumer. Meaning, does anybody want to pay any money for Blockbuster?
Not no more.
Not no more, not in years, because Blockbuster went bust. Yeah. So there's 5 steps in the branding ladder. Now I'll tell you what those steps are real quick if you want to know them.
Yes, please.
Number 1 is the bottom step in the branding ladder is brand absence. This means that most consumers are not aware of your products and services. They don't know who you are and what you do. So you move from brand absence to brand awareness. And brand awareness is where customers are like, hey, I do recognize you. I know that you have furniture stores, So you go from brand absence to brand awareness, where at least they know who you are and what you do, to brand preference. When they say, I prefer to drink Coke, Diet Coke over Pepsi. I prefer Sam's furniture stores. I prefer to sell my business through Seiler Tucker M&A firm than any other firm because they have the most experience. So that's brand preference. Then you go from brand preference to brand insistence. This is where I can't even begin to tell you, Sam, how many different hotels, because I'm a speaker, I speak all over the country. And we'll go to lunch and I ask for a Diet Coke. And they're like, is Pepsi okay? And I'm like, no, it's not okay. If I wanted Pepsi, I'd ask for Pepsi. I only drink Coke, Diet Coke. That's brand insistence. You're not going to go to any other brand. You're only going to go to that brand. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then you go from brand insistence to brand advocacy. And this is where you say, Sam, go Google Seiler and Tucker. Google. Go Xerox this. Have a Coke. Chill out and have a Coke. That's brand advocacy. When you get your business to brand advocacy, then you're at the top of your game. You're in your prime. It's always better when somebody else sells you than when you sell yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so branding is huge value. The biggest, most valuable brand in the world right now is, do you know?
What, Google, Facebook,
Nope, neither one. They're in the top
Coke,
10.
Coke,
What?
Coke or Nike,
Coke is in the top 10, Nike's in the top 10. You're not getting the number one.
Apple.
Apple.
Yeah,
Apple is worth $359 billion.
yeah.
And that's just the brand. That's not cash flow, inventory, assets, real estate, accounts receivables. Just the brand alone is worth $359 billion. So build your brand. The other thing that's very valuable in proprietary assets is trademarks.
Mhm.
You know, trademark your company name, your slogan, your USP, anything that's unique to you. I trademarked Exit Rich. Trademark your podcast. But here's a mistake that business owners make. As they go to Texas, they open up a business and they get a state trademark in Texas, but they never check the federal database. And I've seen clients be in business 5, 10, 15 years, and all of a sudden receive a letter in the mail, a cease and desist letter
Mhm.
that says you can't use that company name anymore because somebody else owns it.
Mhm.
And so they'll hire an attorney, throw lots of money at it. In most cases, they'll lose.
Yeah,
And then they have to
I've sent it
start
to
all
three
over.
people.
What's that?
I've sent the cease and desist to 3 different people.
Oh, you have? Good for you. So you have a federal trademark on your company name.
Of course.
And that's what you need, because when I go to sell a business, I want to make sure that your IP is protected. Because if you say you got a great brand, but you don't even have a federal trademark, you're not going to be able to protect that brand. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and it's not just about protecting your brand, Sam, and protecting your company name. It's also about protecting your logo, your slogan. And for me, like the ST6Ps is trademarked because that's my unique selling proposition. That's something I came up with 20 years ago in the trenches. The STGPS exit model. You know, we have a company, and you could be thinking about this too, but we have a company that has different products. They have like 12, 15 different products. And each product has a separate federal trademark. And each one of those products is exclusive to a certain grocery store chain.
Mhm.
That's huge.
Wow.
You know, and we have a furniture manufacturing company that we're selling. And same thing, they do some private label, white labeling stuff, but they also have some unique furniture that has federal trademarks on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So patents are also big. If you've ever watched Shark Tank, every investor on Shark Tank always asks the same question. Do you have a
Yeah.
patent on that? Do you have a utility patent? Do you have a patent pending? And their offer is always contingent upon a patent. We sold a business for $18 million. It wasn't hardly making any money, but they had 18 patents. Contracts are huge. Manufacturing contracts, distribution contracts, vendor contracts, franchisor contracts that has franchisees, any type of exclusive contracts. Client contracts are the most valuable because a buyer wants to buy a business that has recurring revenue. So if you have a contract that has recurring revenue, a subscription model, that's very important to a buyer. Buyers will pay more money for that. However, here's the caveat to contracts. You have to have that 2-sentence transferability clause. I have never met a business owner in 20 years that actually has a 2-sentence transferability clause. None of them have it. Even if it's business I'm selling for 70 million, they don't have it. You have to have that transferability clause because 99% of all deals are asset deals, not stock sales. And if the buyer doesn't agree to a stock sale or the clients don't agree to consent to transfer, then your deal can stop dead in its tracks. So get those contracts transferable, you know, be preemptive. All right. And then the other big thing is databases. If your databases are well nurtured, and like we have over 30,000 buyers in our database. If your database is well nurtured and can be retargeted and repurposed, you could get money for that. Facebook paid $19 billion for WhatsApp, 19 billion. And WhatsApp was hemorrhaging. They were hemorrhaging. But guess what? They had a synergy that Facebook was willing to pay more money for. And that synergy was 1 billion users. WhatsApp had 1 billion users. And Facebook knew they can monetize an ROI. Celebrity endorsements are huge. You know, like you see Rooms to Go, they have Cindy Crawford, right? Cindy Crawford only puts her name on one furniture store. So we have a client that has products that's endorsed by Oprah. Other strategics will pay more money for the celebrity endorsements because they think if I can get my product in front of Oprah or Cindy Crawford, then that's going to catapult my business to the next level, right? Same thing with radio personalities like Glenn Beck or the Kid Craddock show, or, I used to say Rush Limbaugh, but he's gone. But same thing with radio personalities. They can only endorse one skincare, one diet company at a time. Otherwise, they lose credibility.
Yeah.
And then e-commerce, if you're selling online, I have clients whose business were selling e-commerce and we've sold that had the top, 3 to 5 spots on Wayfair, Modern, Etsy, Amazon, eBay. So this is all what we call prime real estate. It's all proprietary assets that will get you from a 5 multiple to a 7 or to an 8 or to a 9. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So the next piece, so when we're evaluating businesses and when we go to market for our sellers, for our clients, one of the biggest things we look at are what buyers are willing to pay what and how much for these certain synergies. And can I take advantage of economies of scale? Like we have a manufacturing business that we're selling that has a distribution center. It costs them about $5 million a year to run. We have a buyer that has manufacturing too, and have distribution all throughout the United States. The first thing they would do is close that distribution center, saving $5 million increase in EBITDA from day one of closing on the business. Does that make sense? So evaluations and selling is really
Absolutely.
hard.
If it costs $5 million to run it, it just save it.
Right, because that goes to your bottom line and that increases your EBITDA.
Yeah.
So the 5th P is patrons. This is your client base. Most businesses follow the 80-20 rule where 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your business.
Yeah.
You're in furniture sales, so you don't have that problem. You have customer diversification. Most businesses have customer concentration. I'll give you a quick case study. We were selling an oil manufacturing business that had 65% of their revenue, 65 to 70% of their revenue is tied up in the BP contract. So if they lost BP, they would lose 65 to 70% of their market share.
Yeah.
We appraised the company in a $9.8 million range. We have 550 buyers. We narrowed it down to 12, got 12 letter of intent, but every single letter of intent had some cushion in there, had like an earn out or, contingent upon this if they lost the BP contract. So we found one buyer that didn't have any of those contingencies because this one buyer had similar products, similar services, and been trying to get in BP for decades. So they knew once they bought this company and got in BP, they would get their business in there too, right?
Yeah.
And catapult their business to the next level. So they outbid everybody else and offered paid $15 million for 70% of the company, which was 126% more than asking price. So we can find buyers with customer concentration, but it's more difficult. And then the last P, the most important P, is profits. We're all in business to make money, but lack of profits is never the problem. It's always a symptom of not running on one of the other 5 Ps. I have clients that come to me all the time and say, Michelle, I have a profit problem. I'm like, no, you have a people problem. Or no, you have a process problem. Lack of profits is never your problem. If you follow all of these 5 Ps, I promise you, you will be profitable.
That's awesome. I bet you a lot of people don't know about these Ps and how detailed you went into. So going back to your book, Exit Rich. How many do you touch? All your Ps? Do you touch all these chapters or some of the stuff you just talked about?
Yeah, but in a lot more depth. So in Exit Rich, Steve Forbes has endorsed it. Sharon Lecter is my co-author who wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki. So she's a CPA, financial literacy expert and advisor to many different presidents. She writes the Mentor's Corner after each chapter. Plus the original Shark on Shark Tank, Kevin Harrington wrote the foreword. But Exit Rich talks about in great detail your exit strategy, how you should plan for your exit strategy. It also has a chapter that goes into when is the best time for you to sell. It's a mindset chapter. And then it talks about the seller sanity check. What's the most important thing in selling your business? Some sellers will say it's really important for us. Yes, we want a good price, but we also want to make sure that the buyer takes care of our employees, that the buyer takes care of our clients, because our employees help build us. We want to make sure that the buyer carries on our legacy. So there's a chapter all about the seller sanity check, and the best timing to sell your business. Plus, then we go into the 5 types of buyers, their negotiables or non-negotiables. We have a chapter for each one of the P's, really going into a lot greater detail than what I did here. And then we also talk about, after we go through the 6 P's, we talk about valuations. So there are several chapters on valuations, how businesses are evaluated, evaluation methods, how to create a bidding war, how to identify your synergies, how to figure out what buyer is going to pay you top dollar. It's all about, then there's chapters in there about how to put together marketing materials or perspectives on your business. It also goes into, if you're not quite ready to, well, it goes into accepting different LOIs and what they mean, and then it goes into due diligence and how to navigate through due diligence into closing, training. Do you sell a percentage of your business? Do you sell 100%? And if you're not quite ready to sell, there's a whole build to sell chapter in there.
Now, I totally, I know that, I appreciate what you're doing with the M&A and everything, but a lot of business owners sometimes are naive to like, who should they hire to sell their business? I've seen brokers list businesses like, real estate brokers, and people just think anybody can do my business, especially now in the digital age. I've seen posts on Reddit and a lot of other places that, hey, I'm selling my business. Why is it important to get somebody like you or you to sell their business?
Right. So the reason, well, there's a couple of questions in there that you asked, and one of the biggest things that you don't want to hire a real estate agent is because, I mean, my gosh, if you need heart surgery, are you going to go to a dentist to perform your heart surgery?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're not. And real estate agents sell houses or they sell buildings, residential, commercial. Selling a business has so much more moving parts, so many more nuances. We're dealing with employees, we're dealing with non-competes, we're dealing with inventory, we're dealing with assets. I mean, there are environmental issues, lawsuits pending, IRS claims. I mean, the list goes on and on. I've sold businesses in bankruptcy court before. So there's just so many nuances that go with selling a business. You need an expert. And you want an expert that's been doing it for years and years and years. You don't want somebody that's just been doing it for a couple of years. I also think it's important to make sure you hire somebody who's so many businesses in many different verticals. Now, look, an M&A advisor doesn't have to have specific industry experience because a lot of buyers are industry agnostic. They don't care about the industry. They care about the EBITDA. So you don't necessarily have to have specific industry experience, but you really should go with an M&A advisor that has experience selling hundreds of businesses, if not thousands, in a lot of different verticals. And then more importantly, don't get caught in the trap of paying a huge retainer fee. A lot of these firms want to charge you 30, 40, 50, 60, $70,000 for what? To do the evaluation, and I give you the sim and then they never sell your business. So you want to make sure that you hire somebody who's results driven, who gets paid when they sell your business. And you want to make sure you hire somebody who actually has business ownership experience, because the more business ownership experience they have, the more they understand what it's like to be in the seller's shoes, and the more they understand all the different nuances.
So if somebody is saying, hey, I'm not ready to sell my business today, but they say, hey, I want to be able to sell it in 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, I think they should definitely read your book and definitely consult with an M&A, someone in M&A business or somebody, and they should learn how to do that. a lot of people, who are listening to this podcast, some might be new, some might have never, some probably say, what is EBITDA? I mean, net
Yep.
profit is what I'm thinking. Tell people, explain a little bit about EBITDA if you don't mind.
So EBITDA, if you're in a restaurant, a coffee shop, a dry cleaner, laundromat, car wash, you're probably not looking at EBITDA. You're looking at net income on your tax returns, or what I call seller's discretionary earnings. Because once we normalize your financials and add back all the personal expenses you run through your company and add back non-recurring, et cetera, we get to seller's discretionary. EBITDA's, and we really look at EBITDA when it's companies, a little bit middle market companies. EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. And so the business you want to add back, we add back the interest, we add back the depreciation, we're selling a company right now that's got like $10 million in depreciation. We add back the EBITDA, the depreciation, the interest, the amortization, taxes, we all add all that back because we want to get to the seller's true earnings, to the seller's true cash flow. And then we take it one step further by normalizing the financials, because a lot of business owners live out of their business. They run personal expenses through the business, travel, meals, entertainment, automobiles. Some of them pay employees out of their business, family members that may or may not work in a business. So we really want to normalize those financials to get to the nitty gritty, to what the cash flow is of that business.
What do you think about business owners who run a lot of personal expenses through the business? What is your personal opinion about that, or expert opinion about that?
Well, I'm not going to judge them, but I will tell you it makes it more difficult in due diligence, because one of the mistakes that business owners make is they don't track it. If you're going to do that, have a spreadsheet, a monthly spreadsheet, January, February, March, April, for the entire year, and list what you've ran through the business and where it's buried in the tax returns. Because the problem is, when we get to due diligence, if you can't prove those add backs, the buyer's not going to pay you for it. So most business owners forget what they run through the business. They don't have any good records, and it's not going to pass due diligence. Plus, buyers look at it sometimes and like, okay, I'm not going to agree to all that. I'll agree to this, but I'm not going to agree to that. It becomes a negotiation for the buyer on what he believes and doesn't believe that's actually being ran through that business. But my clients, if you can't prove it, I'm not going to let you add it back.
Question that I have, and I'm sure people who are listening to this, a lot of people have a question. So let's just say I got a clothing store, right? And let's say my EBITDA was $1 million, and someone agrees that they'll pay me $4 million. Am I getting $4 million for the business plus whatever my inventory is, or is that inventory probably included in there?
The inventory is probably going to be included, because you're never going to generate the cash flow of that clothing store without inventory.
Okay, but if I own the building, that might be a total.
And you would add the building on top of that, correct?
Gotcha.
But like assets, inventory, we look at working capital, because businesses have to have a working capital target. And working capital is a calculation of assets minus liabilities, 12 months trailing. And that working capital is made up of accounts receivables and inventory. So we want to make sure that business, because the buyer is going to make sure that when they buy that business, it's going to have sufficient working capital.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and not always cash. A lot of times business owners are like, oh my gosh, I got $1 million in cash, I got to leave that in the bank. Not necessarily. It depends. Is it an asset sale? Is it a stock sale? It just really depends. You might have to leave a part of it in which to substantiate that working capital target if you fall short in inventory or accounts receivables, but not the entire amount.
No, the entire amount. You also have a book called Sell Your Business, which you wrote before the Exit Rich. When you write these books, you've written, this is your second book, and
it's actually my third. The other one's not out yet.
You wrote a chapter in that Think and Grow Rich also. I'm sorry.
Correct? No, that's okay. And I got another book about growing wealth through acquisitions that's going to come out after this one.
Okay. So why do you write these books, and Why do you educate? What makes you do that?
Well, I write the books. Number one, I love to write. I can write a book in 6 weeks. In fact,
Wow.
all my books I've written in 6 weeks. I love to write, number one. Number two, I love to educate. And you've said it several times on your show, business owners are naive in different areas. They go to a real estate agent to sell their business. They don't really think about their exit strategy or their processes. So I write the books to educate business owners and really to educate them, because it's shocking to me that M&A and brokering has been around forever. But when I speak at events with like 1,000 people, I ask, how many of you are familiar with a business broker, M&A advisor, and what we do? And maybe I see 10% of the hands go up. So a lot of business owners are not even aware of the services we provide. Plus, they're really not aware of what it takes to build a sustainable business that you can scale and sell. And that is your nest egg. That is your retirement fund. So I
Yeah.
really write the books to educate. When I wrote Sell Your Business for More Than It's Worth in 2013 and did the research, I learned that 95% of all startups, 1 to 5 years, will go out of business. That's common knowledge, right? But when I wrote Exit Rich in 2019, 2020, I did the exact same research and learned that the business landscape has flip-flopped. And I guarantee you, business owners don't know this because the media doesn't talk about it. So now only 30% of those startups are actually going out of business. So Startup Nation, this is a great time for you to start your company because only 30% are going out of business. However, this is where it flip-flopped. Out of 27.6 million companies, those businesses that have been in business 10 years or longer, 70% of them are going out of business. 70. They're not
Wow.
exiting rich. They're exiting poor. They're selling for pennies on the dollar. They're closing their business, or they're filing bankruptcy. And when you file bankruptcy, you don't just lose your business assets, you lose your personal assets too, because most business owners pierce the corporate veil. So they sign personal guarantees. They take a mortgage out against their house to support their business. And a lot of times they lose their personal assets too. So you hear like about all the big public companies all the time, like Toys R Us in business 75 years goes out of business. Blockbuster, obviously, but Pier 1, Steinmar, J.C. Penney's is in trouble. Montgomery Ward is in trouble. Godiva Chocolate closes 1,500 locations. GNC closes 900 locations. But you're not hearing about all the private companies on every street corner in every town in every state across our great nation that are going out of business. So that's why I write my books, is to educate that your business is not your baby. Go home and love on your babies. Treat your business as the most valuable asset you have. Build it on the 6 Ps so it is sustainable, so it is scalable. And when you're ready, you can sell your asset for 5 million, 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, whatever your desired price tag is. That's
Whatever
why I do
desired
it.
price. And a lot of
What's
people,
that?
a lot of businesses, I think a lot of businesses that have been in business for 10 years, they probably go out of business because they don't follow the 6 Ps. And
Yes.
they or if they even have a process, it gets antiquated and they don't refresh it.
That is
You know?
absolutely correct. So I always say the number one reason that these businesses are going out of business is because they stopped doing what I call AIM. AIM. AIM is always innovate and market. Always innovate and market. These business owners have been in business 15, 20, 30 years. They stop innovating. They want to keep doing things the way they've always done. And their customers might be aging out and not purchasing their products or services anymore. Plus, you got to look at how consumers purchase products and services. Whoever makes it easiest for the consumer to do business with your company is the company that's going to win. Amazon is winning because they make it so easy to do business with them. You can practically order a horse on Amazon and have it delivered to your house in 2 days. So they stopped doing AIM, and you're right, they stopped keeping up with the times. Like I once sold a distribution company, been in business for 40 years. They had no computers. They had no inventory system. Everything was on Rolodex. Everything was on paper. Heaven forbid if there was a fire. So that's why these businesses are going out of business. That's why I write my books. It's my passion. It's my mission to help business owners, really build a sellable asset so they can exit rich.
I appreciate that. We're getting towards the end of the show, and I ask everybody these three questions. If today was the last day, if let's say you lived 110 years of your life, you wrote a lot of books, you sold a lot of businesses, and you went from 98 to 99% of closing. But today is the last day, and you're about to meet a creator, and everything got destroyed, your books, your podcast, everything, and they give you a pen and a paper and say, Michelle, write three things that you can leave for the world, your future generation, the future world. Three things. These are three truths, three guides to greatness, three ways how to conduct business. What will those three things be?
You mean if all my books and everything's gone?
Everything is gone. Just
Everything is gone? What's my three truths?
Pen and a paper.
Pen and a paper. I would say number one, be true to yourself. Be ethical. Don't try to be somebody else. Number two, align yourself with a mentor. Somebody who's been down the path you want to travel. So you can learn from their mistakes instead of your own, because their path, their expertise will shorten your learning curve dramatically and get you on the path so much quicker. I would say number three, really the most important thing in life is God, family, and make sure that you make an impact on everybody else and touch and help as many people as you can possibly help.
Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate it. But Michelle, one last question. I ask this to everybody. What is your definition of humility, and why do you think humility is important, and why?
Yeah, I think, look, sometimes when I get on these podcasts and I say, yeah, we sold 500 businesses or sold 1,000 businesses and we do this and that, it's kind of braggadocious and I don't like to brag. But people also want to know, are you credible? What have you done? Why should I listen to you? And I think that you got to try to get your story across so that you do have that credibility without, like I said, being braggadocious. Like I said in the branding ladder, it's always better when somebody else sells you than when you sell yourself.
The advocacy.
What's that?
The advocacy, when someone is advocating. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's awesome, Michelle. Thank you so much. I hope you sell millions of copies of this.
Well, we got to tell your listeners where to get the book.
Yes. So and that's what I'm about to say right now. I hope you sell millions of them. Where can they find this book at?
Sure. So the book comes out in June, but you don't have to wait till June to read Exit Rich. You can go to exitrichbook.com for $24.79, which is less expensive than Amazon. We will send you the digital download immediately, so you can start reading it today. Mm-hmm. We'll ship the hardcover to your doorstep for anyone that lives in the United States. And then we'll give you a lifetime membership into the Exit Rich Book Club, where there's video content and me doing deep dives in these different strategies, techniques, transformational thinking, plus documents to operate your business and documents to sell your business. So we have policy and procedure manuals, org charts, employee handbooks, employee non-competes. We have sample letter of intents, purchase agreements, sample due diligence checklists, closing docs. All of these documents will cost you over $30,000 if you went to your attorney to recreate. They're there for your review and immediate download. Plus, we'll give you a 30-day membership into Club CEOs, which is an entrepreneur mastermind that I founded, in which to help entrepreneurs really build that sustainable, scalable business so they too can exit rich, all for $24.79.
Everything for $24.79. They get everything. They get the hardcover book. They get the downloadable book. They get all these forms. They get a 30-day membership to the CEO Club. Tell us a little bit about the CEO Club, if you don't mind.
So the CEO Club is like, we'll actually have one coming up this week where we do it twice a month. And it's a Zoom mastermind where we ask those transformational questions. We do hot seats. We answer questions if somebody's got a problem that they're stuck on. And we really help give that support to the entrepreneur who might be stuck and going, oh gosh, what do I do with this problem? Or what do I do with that problem? Or how do I grow? Or how do I hire the right people? And it's just, like I said, it's really Q&A and hot seats, so we can provide that expertise that business owners need.
What is the regular monthly dues on CEO Club, if you don't mind me asking?
We'll give you a 30-day free membership, but I think it's $79 a month.
Oh, It's nothing. So I mean, yeah, if you want to grow your business or you want some kind of mentorship or some kind of
Yeah,
guidance or help, it's nothing more valuable than to learn it from other CEOs who are like-minded people. Where can they
absolutely.
find you at, Michelle? Are you on what social media are you mostly on?
Yep. So we're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, probably mostly on LinkedIn. They can text Michelle to 888-526-5750. All of my
Uh,
websites pop up and my social media pops up. So you can follow me on social media and connect with me on LinkedIn. And our main website is silertucker.com.
SeilerTucker.com, and give
Yeah.
me that text number again one more time
It's
slowly.
888-526-5750.
All right, perfect. And that's awesome. Michelle, thank you so much for coming over here. Thank you for educating us. I can't wait to read that book, Exit Rich, and I hope a lot of people read them. And because there's something that you talked about, it kind of like I told you beginning of the show, a lot of things that you said, it aligns with my beliefs. But you are the expert, and so thank you for coming over here, telling our audience, what they need to do, how they can set up their business. And I mean, even if they don't set up their business and they just want to stay in their business, having this 6 P's, all the fundamental things that you talked about is
Yeah.
so important to have a good, viable, sustainable business. Thank
Yeah,
you
you
so
need
much.
that infrastructure. But the one thing I want to say too is a lot of business owners have that mindset that I never want to sell my business. You can't have that mindset because here's the bottom line: nothing lasts forever. What goes
Absolutely.
up must come down. You're either growing or dying. There's a reason 70% of businesses are going out of business. So you should always build your business as if you're going to sell it for your desired price tag. When you decide to pull that trigger is up to you. But at
Yeah,
least when you're ready, you control the narrative, you control the outcome, and you'll have a sellable asset.
perfect.
Otherwise, you
Awesome.
won't.
Yes, yes, yes. I hope I can get you again in the future one more time, and talk a little bit more that stuff that we didn't talk about. So I hope you'll accept my invitation then, and
Sure.
we'll see you soon. I'll definitely be in touch with you and talk to you soon too.
Okay.
And I appreciate everything you said. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for having me on. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.